A happy 2024, a happy New Year's to you and your loved ones. As my son Connor said, we're going to start off 2024 with the first UFC event, Fight Night Ankalaev versus Walker 2. It's time for the rematch. The first one wasn't the full fight, should have. Ankalaev got away with a little. He escaped a DQ, honestly, a DQ loss. I digress a little bit. Moving on. I'm going to be breaking down every single fight, obviously, starting off with the preliminary fights, ending off with the main event. The way I do it, or the way I like to do it, is I'll usually go over some physical stats first, like height, reach, age, and then we'll move on to the resumes, records, UFC records, notable win trends, and then we'll get into the more nebulous stuff, like fun facts, you could say, fun facts. I think this is going to be a fantastic card. There is no better way to start off 2024 than with a card like this. I think maybe if you just give it a quick glance, you might not be impressed. But if you actually look at all of these matchups, these are going to be, I think these are bangers. I think these are bangers, multiple wars. I think there's a chance, and there's always a chance. But I think here specifically, there's a good chance that there's not even a single decision. I think there might be two. There might be two decisions, but there's a possibility that there's none, all finishes. I think a lot of people are going to be getting rocked. A lot of people getting sent to talk to the Wizard of Oz. That's enough of that, though. Starting off with the first fight of the night, we have Joshua Van, who's stepping in on late notice, versus Felipe Bunes, who's making his debut despite having been in the UFC for over a year. I will get to that in a second. A little bit of the physical stats. Joshua Van, he's a wee lad. Wee lad, both height and age. He's 22 years old. He's 5'4", and he has a 65-inch reach. Granted, these dudes are flyweight, so they're going to be a wee bit smaller, but 22 and 5'4", he's a wee lad. He's a wee lad. Felipe Bunes, on the other hand, 34 years is not 34 years his senior, but 34 years old, 5'6" tall with a 69-inch reach. So he will have a height and reach advantage. However, there is a tremendous age gap in favor of Joshua Van. I wonder what the stats are for 12-year male age gaps. To put the pick first, honestly, I think Joshua Van is going to take this one despite him stepping in on short notice. Felipe Bunes was expecting, I think, Dennis Bondar. And Dennis Bondar had to pull out, so Joshua Van will be stepping up and fighting Felipe. Despite Felipe having a full camp, basically, and training for this fight, despite not expecting Joshua Van, I'm not going with him because Joshua Van was actually extremely impressive in his last outing. He showed a lot of heart. I think one of the biggest takeaways from the last fight is, one, heart, but two, he can adapt his boxing specifically to opponents mid-fight, even though he's taking damage. Kevin Borjas was putting on a tremendous performance, my Peruvian brother, just not enough, and Joshua Van wanted it. You could see he wanted it. He took the heavy shots from Borjas. He was getting touched and rocked and hurt occasionally, but he pulled it out. He's very young. I think we're going to see tremendous improvements fight to fight. He's going to look like a completely better version of himself from the Borjas fight, even though he already looked great. On paper, Josh, I think, really wins this fight. He has a chin. He could take shots at least. He didn't really have too much trouble in his previous outing. And Felipe Bunes, to go back to, I actually skipped over this, but the records, Joshua Van is 9-1. He's 2-0 in the UFC right now. Felipe Bunes is chilling at 13-6. 13-6, and he, like I said, despite having been in the UFC for a year, I believe, he is now making his debut. He's making his debut because he popped as soon as he joined the UFC for GW1516, which is a metabolic modulator, a prohibited metabolic modulator. I don't know too much about what it does other than that. I really haven't looked into it that much. And with that, I say there's a possibility he comes out with roid strength. Just some kind of PED enhancement. Who gives a fuck? Who knows? I still think Joshua Van takes this. The size difference I don't think is going to be too crazy. And Joshua Van kind of dealt with that last time with Kevin Borjas a little bit. And Joshua Van has heart. I think he'll pull this one out, whether it be scrappy or he takes it decisively. But who knows? Maybe Felipe Bunes gets a little sneaky sub on him or some shit. I really don't know. I think that Joshua Van will outclass Felipe on the feet. Joshua does kind of chill sometimes. He kind of chills and drops his hands and he looks when he's throwing leg kicks. One thing that I did notice from Felipe Bunes is he likes to wait specifically and tank leg kicks in order to counter, in order to give back a nice juicy counter. So that might be terrifying as well. But I think Joshua Van shouldn't really have too many problems with that. Moving on, a spooky fight. Spooky fight. Not the spookiest on the card by far, but it's spooky hours, definitely. We have Nicholas Moda versus Tom Nolan making his debut, Dana White Contender Series graduate. Now, I think what this comes down to, there's obviously a trend on who everyone's picking. And I'm going to pick him too. I'm going with Tom Nolan. Tom Nolan, he's 23 years old, 6'2" tall, and 73-inch reach. He's huge at his weight class at 155. Nicholas Moda, notably shorter, half a foot shorter, at 5'8". He's 30 years old, 70.5-inch reach. So all the physical stats, all the physical advantages are on the side of Tom Nolan here. However, experience is not. Nicholas Moda has literally 3 times the amount of experience that Tom Nolan has. Will that be the deciding factor? Possibly, actually. I think that a lot of other people are saying this too. These odds are a little skewed almost. In fact, I think it might be crazy. I might sound delusional to say this. I think this should be maybe closer to like a pick'em, because Tom Nolan has looked very promising. He's huge. But he's untested. He's green as fuck. We know nothing about Tom Nolan. Like, we've seen him, but we really don't know, actually. Like, he's very content with not using his reach and brawling the fuck out in the pocket. So I don't know. Nicholas Moda, on the other hand, has a lot more experience. He's taken a lot of damage. Chin's been touched multiple times. He's 13-5 compared to Tom Nolan's undefeated 6-0 record with 1 no contest joining Nicholas Moda's 13-5 record. Nicholas Moda has fought bigger guys. He knows how to fight bigger guys. It's nothing new to him, actually. He smoked Cameron Van Camp, and Cameron Van Camp is 6'2" with a 74-inch reach, or at least has listed. You know, Cameron Van Camp is not Tom Nolan, but physically, he might as well be. So, Nicholas Moda was able to wait. Granted, he spammed a hook counter like 6 times that Cameron Van Camp was just completely oblivious to seeing, even though it was right in front of his face, literally passing by his face every time. Nicholas Moda knows, at least, and please follow with me, Nicholas Moda knows how to win this fight. Whether or not he will or even has the actual physical abilities to win this fight, different argument. I'm saying that Nicholas Moda knows how to win this fight, and there's a possibility, obviously, that he does wait it out, that he somehow catches Tom Nolan with some nasty hooks, because he does have power. His chin might be going, but he has power. The power isn't going to go, I think. However, the one thing that we have seen from Nicholas Moda, we've seen him caught and finished. We've seen him caught and brutally finished. You know, Tom Nolan, I think maybe, I don't even want to say it because I might be incorrect. Actually, I might just be misremembering it. We haven't seen Tom Nolan stopped in his professional career, I'll say. You know? 6-0, you can't be fighting the best dudes. I think it's spooky. But I think the matchmakers know what they're doing here a little bit. I think this fight isn't as easy for Tom as it seems, but he might just run through him. Tom might run through him, might snipe him off the rip. Who knows? But the pick is Tom Nolan there. I'm pretty certain about that too. Tom Nolan maybe actually, no pick'em. I take that back. Pick'em was crazy. Tom Nolan's slight favorite though. Like, nothing too crazy. Because Moda's been fighting in the UFC. You know, he has experience. It's not like he's really not the worst dude that they could have picked up. And that's not the easiest fight that you could have on your debut. There's easier dudes that you could fight. You know, there's much harder dudes too, but Nicholas Moda, we'll see. It'll be a nice little test for Tom Nolan, you know. Moving on to another spooky fight, but for a completely different reason. This is not a sacrificial fight by any means, but it's kind of a bizarro, it's just a very queer fight. A very queer odd, strange fight. It's Weston Wilson versus Gene Lord Assassin Silva. Gene Silva is the biggest biggest favorite on this card. Weston Wilson is the biggest underdog on this card. I think for good reason. If you will remember, Weston Wilson was brought into the UFC to face Joanderson Brito on short notice. And he wasn't in the UFC. They brought him up. They were like, hey, come out of the fucking fighting pits of Marine. Hey, come on. Joanderson Brito needs a punching bag, basically. And that's what he was, albeit with the one moment that Weston Wilson had. He is a submission specialist. He is a self-proclaimed bum-ass wonder boy. He did not say bum-ass. I said bum-ass. But he said he's a poor man's wonder boy. I say he's a bum-ass wonder boy. He almost subbed Joanderson Brito with a knee bar for like 2 seconds. Like there were like 2 or 3 seconds where he was like legitimately threatening it. And then Brito brutally punished him and KO'd him. So it's tough. Weston Wilson is 34 years old. He's in that. I'm going to get back to the age specifically in a second. Just we'll finish off the physical stats. Weston Wilson, 34 years old, 6'1" tall, and he has a 73-inch reach. At his weight class, he's also a giant. He's also a giant. But Gene Silva is 27. He's 5'6", and he has a 69-inch reach. So the reach isn't too crazy. 4-inch reach advantage, decent height advantage. The age gap here I think is notable, especially against a dude like Weston Wilson. I think Gene Silva it's his fight to lose, basically. It's neither of these dudes have impressive resumes. Weston Wilson, he's 16-8. Gene Silva, 11-2, with not the best resume to even support that. Not the best wins. The only thing that is good, I guess, is his winning trends. He does have 8 wins by KO, TKO. Granted, these are all outside of the UFC. He's never been finished. I could not really find any footage of his fights, so I'm just basing this off of stats, really. He will be making his debut against Weston Wilson, who also just made his debut in his last fight, his UFC debut. The last little bit I'll say about Weston Wilson, it's actually a couple more things. I have like some fun facts again about where he's fought previously in other professional promotions. He's a submission specialist. Striking, non-existent. Don't believe that bum-ass wonder boy shit. Only believe the bum-ass part, not the wonder boy. Like, that doesn't exist. He really, to put it simply and not be disrespectful, he's just not UFC caliber. The dude really shouldn't be in the UFC. He shouldn't have been in the UFC. And I think they picked a guy in Gene Silva who is good enough to beat Weston Wilson, but might get mollywopped by other dudes. That we'll have to see later. That's really nebulous speculating, but we'll see. Weston Wilson has fought in many other professional promotions. I'm actually just going to list off some of his records from other promotions. He was 0-3 in LFA. He's 0-1 currently in the UFC. And he went 1-0 in Bellator in 2017. Take that as you will. Whatever that means to you, hey. I don't think Weston Wilson wins this fight. I think he wins this fight 5 times out of 100. So maybe a little D20. He gets a natural 20, maybe he wins. Who knows? Gene Silva, you should take this one, my brother. I don't know how exciting this fight should be. I doubt that it's going to go the distance. Someone's probably going to get finished, but we'll see. I think that might be one of the worst fights of the night, but still should be good. We still should see someone losing in a spectacular fashion. Next fight I am looking forward to, however, though. Farid Basharat versus Taylor, I believe it's pronounced Lupili, maybe Lupilou? Lupili, I never really paid attention when they were saying his name. Taylor Lupili, Taylor Lupilou. We'll go with Lupili. I like Lupili. Farid is 26 years old. He is 5'8" tall. He has a 71-inch reach. Taylor Lupili matching him up at 31 years old. 5'6" tall with a 73-inch reach. A little bit shorter, but 2 inches longer on the arms. Farid does have again, I would say this is a notable age gap. Nothing crazy. We've seen worse, but 5 years younger at 26 years old. That's a nice age to be. Older than me, but nice age to be. Farid Basharat is 11-0. He's 2-0 in the UFC. He's undefeated in both his regular general professional career and his UFC career, despite it being pretty green. Of those 11 victories, 7 of them are finishes. 1 submission, 6 KO TKOs. He has a very decent win over Damon Blackshear, who I love. I really rate that dude highly. I think that dude's really good. And I think it might have been on Blackshear's debut or something like that, but it was a tough fight. You know, got a little bit of everything, a little bit of grappling, a little bit of high-level striking, and Farid was able to take it. You know, the thing about Taylor Lupili that I absolutely hate, again, similar problem with Leon Edwards. The man doesn't have, like, this might sound crazy saying, oh, with Leon Edwards, because of, like, pull it out the fire and the last-minute head kick. But really, he doesn't have that sense of urgency. He does not have that sense of urgency. Dudes like that, they're content with the concept. They like the concept of, I'm not going to finish this fight. I'm going to let other people who are watching this fight judge it and decide that I won the fight based off of a point-scoring system. He likes to win fights that way. He's like, no, you know, I could knock this dude out. I could actually pressure him when I hurt him with a decent, sharp, stiff jab. But, like, no. I'd rather those 3 people sitting at a table fucking 30 feet away decide the fight. Decide that I'm the winner. He's one of those guys. He does have crisp striking. He's 19-3, 4-1 in the UFC, Taylor Lupili. Another fun fact, he's actually on his second UFC run. What I mean by second UFC run, he was previously in the UFC, actually. He was in the UFC back in 2015 to 2016. And now he's making his second run. He is now back. Honestly, I'm going with Farid Basharat. I think Farid Basharat maybe isn't as technical or as crisp of a striker, maybe kickboxer as Taylor, but Farid is a grappler. Farid has good grappling. And you might refer to Taylor Lupili's last fight against Loughran, where he was like, oh, he stuffed most of the takedowns. He still got taken down, I think, twice or maybe even 3 times in that fight. He couldn't finish the dude. He didn't want to finish him either. Like, actually, I take that back. Not he couldn't finish him. He didn't want to finish him. He doesn't want to finish people. Loughran was still touching him occasionally and actually pressuring him crazy against the cage, but it was good takedown defense against the cage at the hands of Lupilu. It's a little tough. I don't think it's too tough. I think Farid is honestly just a lot more of a solid, better fighter, really. Like, his striking might not be as technical and crisp as Taylor's, but I think it's comparable to Taylor's in the sense that he can defend himself, and he could even possibly win striking exchanges. I think the real difference comes from grappling, which Farid has. I like Taylor. I honestly do like Taylor. I just think Farid is going to have his number in this one. I think that's what it comes down to. This is one of the fights that I was saying, I think one of the 2 fights that might end in decision. I will say for Taylor Lupilu, though, he has a very nice jab, and he knows how to use his reach. He knows how to fight longer, use his weapons at least. And until the takedowns actually start, like, succeeding, going all the way, he's good at stopping him. Or he's good at trying to stop him. So we're going with Farid. Farid's the pick. I think that's actually pretty simple, too. I like Farid a lot in this fight. I will say one thing to notice, maybe if Taylor Lupilu is a big Clayton Rodriguez fan and he watched Farid's fight versus him, he'll notice that Farid got head kicked straight off rip by Clayton. And maybe he tries to run out straight up head kick Farid right out the gate. I doubt it, though. We're going with Farid Basharat. Moving on. This is one of my most anticipated fight. I'd say this probably tied for the most anticipated fight for me. That's not the main event. Considering making a video solely on this one, actually. You might see it. I might be down in the description if you look and there's nothing there. I ended up not making it. Marcus the Maniac McGee, like the fucking protagonist of the titular novel, versus Gaston. He looks like Gaston. Bolaños, my Peruvian brother. This is a spooky one, you know. I think it's spooky in two ways, really. There's two kind of general ways this is spooky. Any Marcus McGee fight is going to be spooky because he is spooky. Gaston Bolaños is he's a world-class striker. However, some people might not like me saying this, in my personal opinion, and I'm looking for reasons to fucking pick Gaston, okay? I've switched probably 4 times back and forth between picking Marcus McGee or Gaston Bolaños, you know? I originally started out with Marcus McGee. I was riding hard with Gaston Bolaños for a long time, like literally right up until I was making this video. Basically, I was rehearsing another part, and I was picking Gaston there. But when I got down to the nitty-gritty details, I really can't. It's tough. It's very tough to. I like Gaston Bolaños as an underdog in this fight. I think he's a phenomenal striker, like I said, a phenomenal kickboxer. He's Peruvian. That means a little something to me. He has a leg kick TKO. I just like the vibe. Here's the problem. Marcus McGee might not have been facing the best dudes in Journey Newsom and JP Bays, but he's a monster. We can see he's a fucking monster. Like, he has the face of a dude who's like 6'6" and 300 pounds, even though he's much smaller. Marcus McGee, let's go over the physicals. Marcus McGee is 33 years old. He's 5'8" tall. He has a 69-inch reach, so decent size at the bantamweight. Gaston Bolaños, 2 years younger, at 31 years old, 5'7" tall, matching his reach at 69 inches. So these dudes are pretty similar physically. Skills-wise, that's not the case, unfortunately. I think Gaston might have a tiny more technical striking edge in that sense. Like, he might be more skilled, might know more techniques. Marcus McGee, I think, is a better mixed martial artist, though. That's, I think, the real problem with Gaston Bolaños is once you get into his record, once you look at his previous fights, he has highlight reel KOs, spinning reverse elbow KOs. The only problem is they're against bums. They're against bums. He's gotten caught and finished by bums and by submission. That's really the big, I think, deciding factor in this fight is the ground game of both of these gentlemen. I think Marcus McGee is going to have a way better ground game, a way more developed ground game than Gaston Bolaños. God, this is tough, man. It's super tough for me. Super tough for me. We'll finish off with the stats, actually. Marcus McGee, he's 8-1, 2-0 in the UFC. Gaston Bolaños is 7-3 and 1-0 in the UFC. They have similar records, despite Gaston maybe being a little bit more unsuccessful, you could say. Their records are somewhat similar. You know, I've been watching Marcus McGee and picking Marcus McGee since his debut, so it was tough to me to want to switch and to consider switching to Gaston Bolaños. Gaston Bolaños, my Peruvian brother, man. Not only is it the hole in Gaston's game that is grappling, it's also the openness that Gaston sometimes finds himself in with strikes. And I mean, not even high-level strikers coming close to landing big shots on him. I'm talking about normal dudes, okay? Specifically, if you watch that Aaron Phillips fight back, there's multiple devastating, hellacious knees that Aaron Phillips threw right up the middle that came so close to cracking the fucking jaw of Gaston Bolaños multiple times. Okay, now, granted, Marcus McGee is not Aaron Phillips, but I think Marcus just has him. I think that Gaston has a chance to win this fight, especially on the feet. But if Marcus comes out like a dog going grappling heavy, who knows? This shit might just be... It might not be as good of a fight as I would expect it to be if that happens, but Marcus is going to win. Like, it's... Gaston can be hit. He can really be fucking hit. That's the problem. He can be hit. You know, I wouldn't be surprised to see Gaston get cracked bad, taken down, and subbed instantly. Like, it would be horrible, man. But, you know, and Gaston's a little older. Like, we've kind of seen... Not to say we've seen him fully. He could really surprise us. But I'm going to be loyal. I can't switch up. I'm going with my boy Marcus. I'm going with Marcus McGee. I think Marcus McGee takes this one. I think Marcus McGee is maybe even going to finish Gaston Bolaños. It's tough, though. It's tough. Marcus McGee, we move on. Please check the description. There might be a whole video just on Marcus McGee versus Gaston Bolaños, as well as a video on Matthew Semmelsberger versus Preston Parsons. These are two of my most anticipated fights of the night. I think they're going to be fucking wars. Bangers. Speaking of, coming up next, Matthew Semmelsberger versus Preston Parsons. Matthew Semmelsberger stepping in on short notice to face Preston Parsons. Preston Parsons was training. He had a camp for this fight. He was expecting to fight Basil Hafez. If you remember Basil Hafez, he also was not in the UFC, stepped up on very short notice. I think he was supposed to fight in the Contender Series, but instead got called up to step in on short notice versus Jack Della Maddalena. Do not say JDM. I don't know what the fuck it is with MMA fans and acronyms, even though MMA is an acronym. Or just initials, I should say. Don't say JDM, just please say Jack Della Maddalena. Please, for Christ's sake. For Christ's sake. Matthew Semmelsberger, Semi the Jedi. He's a big lad. 6 foot 1 inches tall, 75-inch reach, 31 years old. Versus Preston Parsons, a little younger at 28 years old, 5 foot 9 inches tall, and a 71-inch reach. You know, a lot of people, this is one of the most horrifying fucking fights of the night to me. It's absolutely terrifying. Maybe even more worthy of a video than the previous fight, just because I think this fight has a lot higher chances of it being competitive. This is kind of a striker versus grappler matchup. Preston Pressure Parsons is predominantly, if you look at his record, he's a grappler. He has 9 wins by sub. Granted, most of these are against, or maybe even all of these. All of them, actually. No, all of them are against people outside the UFC, aka bums. The thing is, it's not like he's a dog shit striker. It's not like Preston Parsons is a dog shit striker. If you've watched his 3 UFC fights, he is 10-4, 1-2 in the UFC, compared to Matthew Semmelsberger's 11-6 overall record, 5-4 in the UFC. Preston Parsons' 1-2 UFC record is deceptive, and I'll tell you why. Starting off with his D-Rod fight. He fought Daniel Rodriguez. Daniel Rodriguez, he was, at the time of that fight, 34 years old. He's 6 foot 1 inches tall and a 74-inch reach. He's kind of comparable to Matthew Semmelsberger in terms of size. Preston Parsons, surprisingly enough, was getting tagged. He gets tagged in all of his fights, and that's the number one people will say. Oh, he gets tagged. He has no hands. He will get dropped. He will get touched. Sure. Except the fact that he does have hands, actually. He has extremely deceptive striking. Extremely deceptive little blitz combinations. In all 3 of his fights, including the Evan Elder fight, which he won, in the D-Rod fight and the Trevin Giles fight, I was looking for Trevin Giles' name, and the Trevin Giles fight, there's moments where Preston Parsons has success solely with the hands, solely with blitzing and catching his opponents lacking. His opponents seem to think like, oh, this dude's letting me dictate the pace of the striking. And Preston Parsons just instantly jumps forward, throws a couple hooks, actually hurts people. He gets them to cover up. He gets some respect. Granted, I think his biggest problem, not even like the whole striking thing in general, it's defense. It's defense. And chin is like the cherry on top, even though that's not the typical problem that like a chinny fighter would have. He's not chinny. Preston Parsons has insane heart. He will take damage. He will get back up. It doesn't matter if he's gassed. People say he has no cardio. I don't think that's true either. I think maybe his cardio is a little suspect. But he pushes himself. He can get second wins. I've seen him get second wins and lose them, but get them nonetheless. Specifically in the D-Rod and Trevin Giles fights. He comes back. Even if he's tired, he will come back. And he still tries to apply that pressure. Like his nickname says, pressure. He will try to go forward and set the pace, which I like, honestly. Which I like. He's coming off of that decision loss to Trevin Giles. Another little fun fact that you could say, he has two, excuse me. He is 0-2 win and loss career KO TKO. So he has no finishes with the hands, but he has been finished on the feet twice. Which is a bit spooky, because ultimately, this is a fight that I've also switched between back and forth. I think Preston Parsons is one of the best underdogs that you could pick on this fucking card, for real. And that moment of silence was me deciding if I want to switch back to Preston Parsons. I like Preston Parsons, and I love the way he fights when he actually has training. When he has trained for a full camp, he fights well. The problem, like I said, is defense. He will block punches with his face, and eventually it adds up. Eventually he starts to slow down. The shots do more visible damage. They elicit bigger reactions. And then it gets scary for Preston Parsons. And when you go up against a guy like fucking Matthew Semmelsberger, who hits like a goddamn truck, I don't know if you can take that. Preston Parsons' chin has held up so far in terms of that. It's taken a lot of strikes, multiple combinations, multiple sequences to get him out of there. But I think Matthew Semmelsberger takes this one with the grappling. Not the grappling, excuse me, I misspoke. With the striking. I think the difference here is going to be the striking. I think Matthew Semmelsberger, if he has learned, he's one of the toughest guys in the UFC, I think. If he's learned how to finish people, finish them. Because Matthew's number one problem really is he starts fight-ending sequences, or he can start fight-ending sequences, catch people badly, hurt them, but he doesn't actually finish those sequences. He does not finish the fight. Somehow or another, whether he lets up or his opponent recovers, they come back. And sometimes they come back and fucking win. Bad, too. Speaking of that, Matthew Semmelsberger's last outing against Uros Medic got KO'd in the third round by a spinning fucking back fist. In a fight that was very back and forth, actually right even before the spinning back fist, got hurt real bad, dropped by up kicks. In a fight that he was doing massive damage, dropping Uros himself. He drops people pretty much every fight, Matthew Semmelsberger does. Except if you look at every fight, he doesn't win them, and he doesn't get finishes in all of them. So, that's something very strange. Like I said, Preston Parsons was preparing for another pressure fighter in Basil Hafez. That would have been a very good fight, actually. I would have been very excited to see that, too. And it's not the most short-notice fight that you could possibly take if you're Matthew Semmelsberger. So I think the striking is going to be the deciding factor. I'm going with Matthew Semmelsberger as the pick. Slight favorite. But I will say, and I might make a video on this, so please check the description. There's more likely to be a Preston Parsons versus Matthew Semmelsberger video than there is to be a Gaston Bolaños versus Marcus McGee video, just because I think Preston Parsons, it's going to be a more competitive fight. Maybe it doesn't play out that way. But I think it's going to be a much more competitive fight. Preston Parsons, I think, is one of the best underdogs on this card, but I am not picking him. Please do not get that twisted. I'm not picking him. I might throw a little action on the side on him in like a little backup parlay, a little something. But, hey. As of right now, no. It's tough. Preston Parsons, man, if you watch his fights, he has moments where not only is he just competing, he's doing good. He's doing very good against his opponents. Just can't hold on to it. And then he gets caught. It's bad, man. And the striking is his weakness, really. It's his weakness. I'm not going to say he's a dog shit striker. It's just the striking imposed on him, other dudes hitting him, that's his weakness. Anyways, we move on. Matthew Semmelsberger's the pick. To the featured prelim and The only real sacrificial fight, yeah, the only sacrificial fight. The other fight is not a sacrificial fight. This is a sacrificial match. Andre Arlovsky, the legend, versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. Dominican man's salsa boy. Now, why is this match a sacrificial matchup? Andre Arlovsky, we're not talking about record. I'm not talking about record for a second. I want you to follow me. You know, we're going into dreamland. You know, just fantasy land. Follow me. Close your eyes and listen to what I have to say. Andre Arlovsky is 44 years old, 6'3" tall, 77-inch reach, compared to the much younger Waldo Cortez Acosta, 32 years old, 6'4" tall, 78-inch reach. These guys are heavyweights. Now, I could stop this right here. Hope you still have your eyes closed. I could stop this right here. My only question that I have to ask you, if these two fighters were making their UFC debuts, you knew nothing about them, and better yet, they both had a record of 0-0. They haven't fought a single time. Both of these men are making their debuts. You only have access to their physical stats. What would you pick? What would you pick? That's what I mean by sacrificial. Andre Arlovsky is a legend of the sport. He is very low-key getting sacrificed because he's fucking washed, honestly. It's just Father Time. You can't beat Father Time. He has a crazy record. 34 wins, 22 losses, 1 no contest. 23 of those 34 wins and 16 of those 22 losses, and the singular no contest took place inside the UFC's octagon. Waldo Cortez Acosta, still pretty young in his career at 10-1, 3-1 in the UFC. What this comes down to is Andre Arlovsky is the better fighter in terms of all the skill that he has. Like, you know, all the experience, all the skill, all the know-how, his expertise. He's just done. It's over. It's over, man. Unless Andre Arlovsky tweaks out instantly, goes straight full Sambo and gets a sub. Like, I don't know what happens here, really. Like, or I know what happens here. That's actually what I should have said. I know what happens here. These dudes are heavyweights. Waldo's going to KO him. Waldo's going to fucking knock him out brutally with, as his coaches call it, the Waldo. The Waldo. Now, you might ask yourself, what is the Waldo? The Waldo is that signature fucking demonic overhand right that Waldo charges up and throws like it's a goddamn like EX charged strike. He's coming off of a juicy win over Lucas Brzeski. He's a Dana White Contender Series graduate. There's a crazy fucking age gap between these two with 12 years. Again, 12 years, and at heavyweight it's insane. Waldo pushes that heavyweight weight limit at 264, 265. You know, it's nutty shit. It's nutty shit. It's nutty shit. And the weirdest part is Andre Arlovsky, even in his losses, besides the actual losses, the recent losses, he hasn't looked straight up dog shit. Like, horrible, horrible, horrible. He didn't. He really didn't. Even, like, the Dontel Mays shit, that's really what we're expecting to happen here. You know, it's just a matter of durability. Can you take the shots? I don't think he can take the shots. I don't think Andre can take the shots anymore. I don't think you can, in good faith, pick Andre Arlovsky, but if you have reasons, please let me know. I'm not, and that's not to make fun of you or anything. I just want to know. Waldo, realistically, he wins this fight 9 times out of 10. Legit. Like, some other little fun facts about Waldo Cortez Acosta. He does have boxing experience as well as actual amateur MMA experience. He went 5-1 as an amateur in MMA, 5-3 in boxing. However, he did get KO'd or TKO'd twice in boxing. Something maybe we'll see later on in his career become a problem. But so far, he's been doing okay against dudes, you know. Andre, not so much. His career is over. Like, it's not even like he's in the twilight of his career. Like, nah, it's nighty-night. It's really, it's over, man. It's over, brother. It's over. That's enough about that, though. Moving on to another good fight. Another good fight. A spooky fight. A spooky fight. Now, this fight could almost have a whole video on it itself as well. That fight is Phil Hawes versus Bruno Ferreira. A similar situation to the last fight, however, not sacrificial. This is a 100% competitive mixed martial arts fight. Phil Hawes is kind of in the same situation as Andrei Arlovsky. He is a much better fighter than Bruno Ferreira. Athletically. The only thing he can't... There's two things he can't match. He can't match Bruno's power and something else that I'm going to get to that he does not have, that he needs specifically to face Bruno Ferreira. I've gone back and forth on this one not too many times, only about once. I started off with Bruno Ferreira, swapped over to Phil Hawes, but I'm back with Bruno. I think the reason why is relatively obvious, too. If you're picking Bruno because you think he's a better fighter than Phil Hawes, I think you're mistaken. If you're picking Bruno because you think that he'll brutally knock Phil Hawes the fuck out, that's more like it. Phil Hawes is extremely talented, both physically and skill-wise. Like, he's an extremely talented, explosive athlete, and he has extremely crisp kickboxing. It's very noticeable when you watch him fight. The only problem is he has no chin. He's, you know, like the Tin Man. The Tin Man has no heart. We could call Phil Hawes the Chin Man. In fact, I think that's actually what we will be calling him, the Chin Man. The Chin Man. Actually, I feel bad saying that shit. I take that back. I'm just joking, Phil. Please, please. In all seriousness, Phil Hawes. He's 6 feet tall, 77.5-inch reach at 34 years old, matched up with Bruno Ferreira, 31 years old, 5 foot 10 inches tall, 72-inch reach. Bruno Ferreira, not the biggest middleweight in the world, not the smallest either. Phil Hawes is a nice size. Phil Hawes is 12-5. Overall, he's 4-3 in the UFC, compared to Bruno Ferreira's 10-1, 1-1 in the UFC. Bruno Ferreira has a 100% finish rate. That includes his loss. He has never... Bombs going off outside my house. Okay. Bruno Ferreira has a 100% finish rate, like I said. He has never seen a scorecard in his fucking life. Even in his loss, he's never went the distance. And I think despite him looking good, especially against dudes like RoboCop, he's still pretty untested. Bruno Ferreira is still pretty untested, you know? He does rely on his power and chin to get him through the fights that we've seen him in. And that didn't work in his last outing. His last outing was against Nurulston Ruziboev. He was undefeated prior to that. Nurulston caught him beautifully, basically, just with a leg kick counter, caught the leg, or it might have just been a body shot counter, but basically caught a kick and just straight punched him, sent him out, pounded him a little bit, and it was all over. Very beautiful by Ruziboev, and that's not honestly the worst loss that you can have. I think that's okay. Like, dudes get caught with that punch, they're getting put out. That was a perfect counter. Phil Hawes, however, you don't have to catch him with a perfect counter. You actually just have to catch him. That's kind of the game here. You just have to catch Phil Hawes. That's what I'm worried about. That's why I'm not backing Phil Hawes. Again, I don't think Phil Hawes is the worst pick by far. There's a very decent chance that he wins this fight. He has more skills. If Phil Hawes can dump damage on Bruno Ferreira and get him the fuck out of here, that will make sense. That will not be surprising. Like, that would make a lot of sense. He has a 5.5-inch reach advantage over Bruno Ferreira, as well as 2 inches taller. Comparable strength. I think these dudes have comparable strength. It's just the chin. It is the chin. If you were to look at Phil Hawes' record, you'd say he's on a downward spiral. It's not even that I think he's on a downward spiral like he's getting worse and worse. It's just his chin, man. He gets finished. He's 4-3 in the UFC. All 3 of those losses have come by KO, TKO, and he's coming off of 2 KO, TKOs. You know, he starts extremely strong. He has great body kicks. He's 1-3 in his last 4. Again, all 3 of those being KO TKOs. Dana White Contender Series graduate. It's just, and he's so well-rounded. He's an accredited wrestler, and his striking speaks for itself. It's just the defense. It's just the chin. Like, it's crazy, man. I'm going straight with the durability of Bruno Ferreira. Bruno Ferreira is going to be the pick here. And the spookiest part about it is that Hawes is the better fighter and has every single tool needed to beat Bruno Ferreira except for a chin. That's the worst part about this one. You know, I like both of these guys. I like Bruno a little bit more just because I picked him in the RoboCop fight. It's tough, but this should be a banger. Someone's going to sleep. I don't know who's going to sleep. Someone's going to sleep. Should be good. Now we're starting to get through these a little bit quicker. Was there anything else that I wanted to say on Phil Hawes versus Bruno Ferreira? Do I want to pick Phil Hawes? I do, but I'm not going to. Bruno Ferreira, I will say again, similar to the Andrei Arlovsky, if these dudes had no record, if these dudes had the same chin, if they had the exact same chin, you somehow knew that for a fact, you would go with Phil Hawes every time. Then you wouldn't, that just wouldn't be a choice. You would go with Phil Hawes every time. But we got to go with Bruno Ferreira, man. I'm going with Bruno again. I'm sorry, Phil. Something to note, too, Phil actually got, I don't know how well he's really recovered from this. You know, we might see it come up again. It's just something to always notice. In his Roman Dolidze fight, he got injured. He was compromised. He tweaked his knee. I didn't actually look in to see if it was like a full blowout, if he had any tears, just maybe sprained it, tweaked it, something like that. But you can see him hurt his knee when he's getting up, when he escapes the mount of, or the control, I should say, of Dolidze. He, like, tweaked his knee. And, like, everyone kind of realized it. Like, Roman paused for a second. And Roman was shaking his head, like, as they were standing up on the ground moments later. When they were at range, Roman would see him slipping and, like, stumbling, not being able to put weight on it at certain angles, and he would shake his head, you know. And really what then happened was he being Phil Hawes, got rocked hard with a strike, went to go put weight on the leg buckled. As the leg buckled, Roman Dolidze jumped in, landed like a fucking 3-piece in a soda, brutally knocked out Phil Hawes. Granted, that was a couple losses ago, but it was spooky. That was bad. Moving on. We're going with Bruno Ferreira on that one. Moving on. Another great fight, one that I switched a bit. I switched back and forth on a lot of these fights, man, more than usual. Like I said, I think this is going to be a phenomenal card for real. We have Ricky Simón, the number 13th ranked bantamweight in the world, taking on Mario Batista. Ricky Simón, we're going to get the physicals and the resume out first before I start going on my tangents. Ricky Simón, 31 years old, 5'6" tall, 70-inch reach, gorilla arms. Mario Batista, 30 years old, 1 year younger, 5'9" tall and a 69-inch reach. And as I said before, these dudes are in bantamweights, so they're fighting at 135 pounds. Ricky Simón has a record of 20-4 overall, 8-3 in the UFC. Mario Batista matches up with that at 13-2, 7-2 UFC record. Despite his UFC record, Mario Batista really hasn't fought the best dudes. He is good. He is very good. The first thing that I wanted to say, actually, was he was gifted a decision. In his last fight against Damon Blackshear, Blackshear won that fight. I don't give a fuck what you say. Damon Blackshear won that fight. That was 100% a Vegas call. And before that, I hadn't heard of Mario Batista before that Blackshear fight. The Blackshear fight is where I figured out he came in on like a 4-win streak, 5-win streak, something like that. I never heard of the dude before. And I was like, oh, this dude's one of the Vegas UFC dogs. Like, he's literally, like, Vegas and UFC have their own dogs, their own, like, fucking weapons. These fighters that you don't hear about, even though they've been killing at least bums, maybe. But they've been doing well, and then they get unleashed. Then they get unleashed for one fight. Vegas made the call. Gave Mario the win over Blackshear. Fuck it. Fuck it, though. Fuck it. He is very dangerous, I will say. Jokes aside, Mario Batista is very dangerous. He is extremely athletic. He applies a lot of pressure. And he's legitimately well-rounded. He can fight on the feet. He can fight on the ground. He likes to actually finish fights, which I appreciate. I really appreciate that. When he's on the ground, he will look for subs. When he's on the feet, he's trying to pressure to finish. It's very nice. It's very nice. He's a great fighter. Mario Batista is a great fighter. The thing that I think is they're still I think the UFC themselves are still trying to develop Mario Batista a little bit more. You know, because Ricky Simone is such a jump up in competition. It's actually kind of tweaked. You know, dude just fought Blackshear. I think Blackshear's amazing. Now he's fighting Ricky Simone. And Ricky Simone himself is like a nightmare matchup for this dude Mario Batista, I think personally. We're gonna go over to Ricky Simon for a little bit. Ricky Simone, see his vibe a little bit. He's coming off of a KO TKO loss from Song Yadong, which it wasn't finished. He did get finished, you know, knees buckled in completely. But he didn't go it wasn't horrible. It wasn't like some fucking Josh Emmett, Bryce Mitchell shit. Not at all. It was nothing close to that. Nothing close to that at all. Ricky Simone has a lot more experience. Before the Song Yadong finish, he was last finished in late 2019. You know, it's not like this dude just gets cracked and he gets dropped a shit ton. He'll be there. I said that Mario Batista applies pressure pretty consistently, pretty constantly throughout the fight. Ricky Simone has relentless pressure. He just has relentless pressure. He never stops. Ricky Simone has also fought in 5-round fights. In the 5th round, he was knocked out in the 5th round by Song Yadong, and had taken Song's power in every round basically up until then. He had taken hard shots, got hurt a couple times. Just the last one really fucking caught him. He's extremely explosive. I think he's going to be stronger, scrappier than Mario Batista, even though Mario Batista is all of those things. He is explosive, he's scrappy, he's strong. I just think Ricky Simone is very much so scrappy, strong, and explosive. He puts on a high pace, which also Mario does too. Mario likes to push the pace a little bit too. I just think Ricky Simone is just the better fighter. Granted, that's straight meme talk. He's the better fighter. But I think Ricky Simone is going to have his way with Mario Batista, but not in the most dominant fashion that would entail. I think he's just going to control him. I see him controlling him to a sub, but maybe he just controls him to a victory. We're going with Ricky Simone. I originally picked Mario Batista, but honestly, this is going to be Mario's toughest fight of his career, so we'll see. We'll see. If Mario wins this fight, I'm sorry, but I think the universe is going to get payback. And it's payback for Blackshear, really. Justice for Blackshear. Karma's coming. The universe will settle this one out. The combat gods, the MMA gods will sort that one out. Moving on to the featured fight of the night. A10 Jim Miller versus Gabriel Mowgli. Phenomenal nickname. Benitez. This is not a sacrificial fight. This is not a sacrificial fight. People might think it's a sacrificial fight. It is not a sacrificial fight. They are not sacrificing Jim Miller. They might be trying to sacrifice Gabriel Benitez, but it's not like that entirely. Jim Miller is having he's having a resurgence, so to speak. You know, he's winning. He's knocking dudes out. Knocked a dude out in his last fight. There is a bit of an age gap. I think this age gap can classify as notable just due to the specific ages. The ages being 40. Jim Miller is 40 years old, and Gabriel Benitez is 35. 35 is getting up there. 40 is too. You know, that's a notable 5-year gap, I think, between those two ages specifically. Other than that, they're pretty much physically identical. Both men 5 foot 8 inches tall with a 71-inch reach. Jim Miller has a 36 wins, 17 losses, 1 no contest overall, 25-6 with 1 no contest in the UFC. A very, very, very impressive UFC record. Gabriel Benitez matches up with that at 23 wins, 10 losses in general, and 7-6 in the UFC. Jim Miller, the UFC and the people want Jim Miller to win. I want Jim Miller to win. I'm picking Jim Miller to win. He's coming off of a big KO win. Gabriel Benitez is also coming off of a finish. He's coming off of a good finish against a bum, but finish nonetheless. He has 4 losses by KO TKO. They're all in the UFC, Gabriel Benitez. He has one of the 14 slam finishes in the UFC. And I think that this is honestly, they just want to give him a competitive fight for Jim Miller that he can win. They want Jim Miller to win. They want Jim Miller at UFC 300. Jim Miller's the pick here. There's not the most thought going into this one. I'm not too hyped for this or anything about that. It's just fill him up, honestly. I'd be content with even not watching that fight and watching another fight in its place. But moving on to the co-main event of the evening. I'm very excited. Matheus Nicolau versus Manel Kape. Or Cap. Manel Cap. I wish I could go back to Portugal, man. I was in Portugal a couple summers ago. Absolutely fucking beautiful. Now, these men are rematching. They've met once before. Matheus Nicolau walked away the victor after a controversial decision victory. Many people would say that Manel Cap won that fight. Edged it out just a wee bit. Personally, I agree with them. I think Manel Cap might have won that fight. Really, it's almost poetic, the way that these two gentlemen's careers have taken off since then. Manel Cap fought Matheus Nicolau as his second fight in the UFC. The dude, Manel Cap, made his fucking debut against Alexandre Pantoja, if you can believe it or not. Lost to him. Lost his debut. And again, lost to Matheus Nicolau in his second fight, but has not lost since then. He is on a 4-fight win streak. He's 4-2 in the UFC, 19-6 overall. Yes, ever since that Nicolau loss, he's been on those 4-fight win streaks. He's a dynamic striker. The fight with Nicolau, he outclassed Nicolau on the feet. Nicolau outclassed him on the ground. It was kind of what was expected, I'd say. But this is why I think people would say it was a robbery, why it was controversial. I personally think that Manel Cap in their first fight Manel Cap came closer to finishing the fight than Matheus Nicolau ever did in that fight. Ever, and more than once. So it's kind of strange to me that he did lose that decision. It is what it is. However, when Manel Cap was on the ground, when Matheus Nicolau was on top of him, Matheus Nicolau controlled him well. Controlled him very well. He's a semi-finalist on Tough Brazil. He was on a 6-fight win streak during the run where he beat Manel Cap. That was stopped in his last fight. He was brutally knocked out by Brandon Royval. Raw Dog. He was brutally knocked out by Raw Dog. Got ass fucked. It's okay. That happens. He is 19. This is Matheus Nicolau. He is 19-3 with 1 draw. He's 7-2 in the UFC. All 3 of his career losses have come by KO TKO, so that includes the 2 losses in the UFC. One of those he's coming off of. Matheus Nicolau is 31 years old. Manel is 30. Matheus is 5'6" tall with a 66-inch reach. Manel Cap is 5'5" with a 68-inch reach. Manel Cap is ranked number 6 is the number 6 ranked flyweight man in the world. Matheus Nicolau 1 ranking higher, number 5. So these dudes are going to meet up again. I know there's a trend that the dude who won the original fight tends to win the rematch. I don't think this will be the case. I think Manel Cap, what I was saying about it being poetic is Manel Cap basically, ever since he met Nicolau, has only gotten better. His career changed, actually. He's been only winning. I think his main problem was he really wasn't active. He wasn't active enough in the beginning of the fight versus Nicolau, and I think he's made that switch. I think we're going to see a completely different fighter than we saw in the first fight come January 13th. Mateus Nicolau, on the other hand, I don't know how much improvement. This is actually harder for me to speculate and guess at. I don't know how much improvement Mateus Nicolau or how many game plans he's going to create around Manel Kape. Maybe he's very confident. Maybe he thinks that, hey, I beat him before, I'll beat him again. Who knows? Also, we have to see the chin of Mateus Nicolau. Has it been cracked? Maybe. Maybe. I'm going with Manel Kape. I'm high on Kape. I'm sold on Kape. I fuck with Kape. I jack Kape. We're going with Manel Kape. Co-main event. Very tasty. Moving on to the main event. The main event of the evening. The number 3 ranked light heavyweight, Magomed Ankalaev, will be fighting the number 7 ranked Johnny Walker. Johnny Walkhard. A big Johnny Walker fan. What can I say? I've been a fan since he joined the UFC. This is going to be an emotional pick. I'm actually going to give 2 picks. This is going to be a complete oxymoron, non sequitur, whatever you call it. I'm picking Johnny Walker. Personally, like, I'm going to be betting on Johnny Walker and other stuff. You can say donation. You can say whatever the fuck you want to say. That's you. Like, you're in that. My hand on the back of your head. I don't give a fuck. Say what you want about Johnny Walker. Suspect chin. I think suspect chin is fair. It's fair. If you say chin cracked, disingenuous. He has been KO'd a few times, but he seems to... It's tough to say recover if the chin recovers like that. But his chin seems to be holding up. You know, he's gotten hurt. He's gotten hurt in the fights, but his chin has held up. He's gone to decisions. He's gone in some firefights. Johnny Walker, he is 31 years old, 6'6" tall, 82-inch reach, compared to Magomed Ankalaev at 31 years old, 6'3", 75-inch reach. So he's going to have a massive reach advantage, little height advantage, although that didn't seem to bother Ankalaev in their first outing. The little bit that we saw. Magomed Ankalaev has a very impressive record at 18-1-1 with 1 no contest, so he has one of everything. One of everything came in the UFC, his UFC record being 9-1-1 and 1 no contest. So the dude is experienced. He is pretty experienced. He has a 50% KO-TKO rate, 9 wins by KO-TKO. His only loss has come by sub, and he has 1 win by sub. All of his other 8 wins have come by decision. He's on a 9-fight win streak. He has only lost and been finished once in the same bout. He has very good wins and a solid record. On paper, Magomed is the better fighter. I really don't think that you can dispute that. Johnny Walker is huge. He's a giant man. He's 21-7 with 1 no contest, 7-4 in the UFC, 1 no contest. That no contest on both of their records should be a loss for Magomed Ankalaev and a win for Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker should be 22-7, 8-4 in the UFC. And Magomed should be 18-2, 9-2 in the UFC. Magomed Ankalaev threw an illegal strike. That should have been a disqualification. But it wasn't Vegas making this call, actually. It was the Saudis. It was the Saudis and Muslims making this fucking call. They were calling it in. They're like, hey, can you flip that for us? And they did. They flipped it. Magomed escaped on the skin of his fucking teeth with a little no contest. I got absolutely juiced. I got absolutely fucking juiced. Oh my god. That would have been one of my biggest parlay hits. I had it was 15 for 800 something. 880 something. And I want to say this was on the Islam Makhachev card if I remember correctly. But basically, they called that a no contest. I won the parlay because I had Islam as my last pick. But DraftKings fucking juiced me from $880 off the $15 wager, literally down to 187 and change. What the fuck? That shit was AIDS. But I digress. I'm hoping. I think Ankalaev wins this fight more often than not. If I'm being objective, if I take all of my emotion out of it, all my bias out of it, I would pick Ankalaev. I wouldn't pick Johnny Walker if I wasn't a fan of him. I would not. So I think Ankalaev will win. I'm picking Johnny Walker, though, because I'm hoping that the wild man, Johnny Walkhard, will reign supreme in the UFC once again. Johnny Walker is extremely unorthodox when he wants to be, and he used to be, really. I think he still can be. He's extremely athletic. He has that X factor. We've seen him get finished. That's okay, though. There's not going to be too much. It's going to be basically all, like, nebulous kind of conjecture, the reasoning behind the Johnny Walker pick. I just got to ride with Johnny. I'm just riding with Johnny. So if you're coming to this looking for a real main event breakdown, it's not going to be the best one for you, honestly. I'm going with Johnny. I'm riding with Johnny. I will be betting on Johnny. Like, let's fucking go, Johnny. Let's go. God damn. However, Ankalaev will probably win. So that's that. I think this is going to be an absolutely fantastic card. I can't fucking believe I've been speaking for the last hour and 6 minutes. If you made it through this video, congratulations, you are a true fighter. Seriously. I will have timestamps so you don't have to listen to me fucking pause and everything. I love doing the picks, man. I love looking through the early prelims specifically. There's something about it. I don't know. You can just get so into like these early prelims, but I think there's going to be a fantastic card. Possibility that there's not a single decision. I think maybe there's 2 decisions max. I'm calling it 2 decisions max on this card. I'm going to go through all my picks one last time. So first fight, we're going with this man Joshua Van. Second fight, going with our boy Tom Nolan. Third fight, Gene Silva. Fourth fight, Fareed Basharat. Fifth fight, Gaston Bolaños. No, fuck that. We can't do Gaston. We have to go with Marcus McGee. We're going with Marcus McGee. And then we go with Preston Parsons. No, fuck that. No Preston Parsons. We're going with Matthew Semelsberger. I feel like I'm going to regret that one, actually, for some reason. But Matthew Semelsberger, we're going with Matthew Semelsberger. Then we're going with Waldo Cortez Acosta. Then we're going with Bruno Ferreira. We're swapping over from Mario Batista. Get the fuck out of here. We're going with Ricky Simone. Jim Miller. Manel Cap. And finishing it off with Johnny Walkhard Walker. Again, I hope you had a wonderful New Year's, a wonderful Christmas. Much love to you and your family. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like it. If you dislike it, please dislike it. If you disagree with me, if you think I'm tweaking, if you want to actually talk to me and understand a little bit more, if you have any questions, please comment. I will reply. I 100% will reply. That's it. I can't wait. Next week, January 13th. Let's fucking go, man. It's been long enough. We've been waiting for fights. We've been waiting for them. I'm actually going to throw in one last little tidbit here. There might be some more videos coming to this channel soon, and they're going to be on all subjects. It's going to be like mainly commentary, I think, but maybe also like more themed content, like a la short films and the such, but maybe not. Maybe that'll take a while. Might be on a completely different channel. Thank you for watching. Much love. Big kiss.